One, two, three, one, two, three, one, two, three, one, two, three, testing. One, two, three. One, two, three, testing. Can everyone hear me? Hello? One, two, three, testing. One, two, three. Is it like really low? Can you hear me well? Can you hear me from the back, all the way to the back, like really well? Yeah, it needs to be a little higher then. One, two, three, testing. Okay, yeah, perfect.
Recording in progress. Good morning, everyone. Would you please come a bit to the front? Audrey, can you come join us for a close circle? Let's get started. So welcome everyone. As you know, today is the Youth Day at the Food Systems Pavilion. So we are taking the lead together with my colleagues from different organizations. Thank you everyone for joining us and helping us organize. Thank you dear speakers and friends for accepting the invitation. As you see, we changed a bit the set of the room to make it as a C and bringing the speakers closer to us because it's about youth and we are coming together to discuss what are the barriers we are facing as youth and what are the options we get offered but we don't make use of it. And I will be moderating the session today. I'm Aya from Morocco, from EIS, the International Association of Citizen Agriculture. A big thanks to my dear friend Wiebe from Clim Eat and Michelle from the World Food Forum. We've been working for this months now. And my colleague Opeyemi, my co-moderator.
Yeah, thank you so much, Haya. And so good to have everyone here today. Okay, thank you so much. My name is Opeyemi Elujulo from Nigeria, and I'm with the World Food Forum as the co-chair of the Focal Points Group. And so good to see so many people here today to together explore what are the opportunities and challenges available for youth engagement when it comes to food system transformation in the climate change world. So we look forward to the engagement, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Opeyemi. I would like to start with my spiritual mother, Mrs. Ismahan El-Wafi, the chief scientist of the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. With nearly 2 decades of experience in agricultural research and development in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, Mrs. El-Wafi is a strong advocate for diversifying into neglected and underutilized crops. She is also internationally known for her work on promoting use of non-fresh water in agriculture and empowerment of women in science. Ms. El-Wafi has been a member of various strategy expert panels and advisory groups. Her contributions to science and policy have been recognized with a number of prestigious awards and accolades, in particular the Excellence in Science Award for the Global Thinkers Forum. Dr. El-Wafi, Mrs. Ismahan, would you please honor us with some opening remarks and your vision as a chief scientist how to engage youth in science and innovative food systems, as well as how is FAO working together with young people hand in hand?
Thank you very much, Aya. Good morning, everybody. And let's make it first name basis so that we take off the silos and the protocol and what have you. So really a pleasure to be with you today. I'm really delighted to be with you to celebrate the Youth Day at COP27. In my perspective, youth for me, when I think youth and I close my eyes, youth is passion. Youth is nothing is impossible. Youth is action. And youth is thinking out of the box. And this is really, I like the format that you put in place, Yemi and Aya and the team. And I think this is what we need to do as we grow up. Unfortunately, in our mind, we create barriers. We create barriers to ourselves, and we get molded in one format that goes with how we were grow up. I would never forget Nawal Saadawi, who is a very famous Egyptian writer and philosopher. I was at Cornell University, and she gave us a speech or a conference. And she started with, she said, I have 1 hour to undo what education have done to you. So education, unfortunately, it's putting us in boxes. It's really stopping us from innovating and thinking out of the box. And it was amazing. I would never forget it. It has been more than 25 years ago, and I still remember that sentence. And I think youth has the possibility to do that. Although our education programs are still very much like it was 100 years ago. We have still the same way whereby one teacher is given to 100 students, and we are not getting enough feedback. So we need to change the way we are structuring our society, and this is only youth can do it. So talking about the subject today, whereby how could we really give youth more space in policy making? How could we give youth more space to be part and parcel of our decisions? I think it's in the hand of the youth. Youth has to speak up. Youth has to call for diversification. So we see one figure from Sweden, we see one figure from Sudan, we see one figure from Morocco or South Africa or Latin America. It's not enough. What we need is millions. What we need is a movement whereby we are getting youth to be part and parcel of the policy making at the national level, at the local level. And with that, what you need is we need soft skills. So we are very good. Universities are excellent to give us the technical background, but they're not good enough to give us the skills, the soft skills we need today more than any other day. And I think that's what we need to create. We need to create a parallel system to universities, or maybe we put it as part of our education program, whereby we need to acquire those experiences that we need to be able to influence policy making, influence programming. Just earlier this year, for example, as a chief scientist, I'm very concerned about how many young scientists we have. We don't have enough. And one of the reasons why we don't have enough is that we don't pay them enough. And there was a paper just on the 3rd of November in Nature. The paper is called "The Cost of Living Crisis is a Fundamental Threat for PhD Scholars and Early Career Researchers. They need to be paid properly." So what Nature does, it's a survey every 3 years or so to look at how it is. And they found out that really we are underpaying our PhD students and our postdoctoral particularly, and young scientists. So if we want to really find solution, we should invest more, not less. And investing in science and in a new solution include a better payment for young scientists. So this is one of the areas that I really, particularly in the agricultural science, we don't have enough taxonomists. We almost lost all taxonomists. We don't have enough seed technologies. We don't have many areas of basic science that used to be quite well furnished or quite addressed by scientists. It's not the case. So there are certain areas that we are losing, and there are areas that we are gaining in terms of IT and digital and what have you. So we need, as FAO, but also as government, to look at that and be really prepared for attracting young scientists to those areas that we need. As FAO, we have many programs that we are trying really to bring in youth. So we have what we call the GPOs and YPOs, whereby we are trying to attract very young scientists and young technical people, not only scientists, to join FAO. And those programs are open for everybody. But what we need to do more, it's maybe the thing we did in the World Food Forum, for example. It's engaging a larger group. It's engaging the larger group, but also exposing them to science and innovation and big scientists. It's exposing them to investors. It's giving them really that ability to talk and be part of a group. So I think that WFF is doing it immensely very well. We need to grow it more. We are only in our 3rd edition. So our 4th edition is going to be much bigger. This year we did the Young Scientist Group. That was excellent. I was very happy to be able to help to bring some of them on board. And I liked very much the closure whereby one of the young scientists said, "I'm a scientist, but many of us couldn't come because of visa issues." So we need to speak up. If you feel that you are discriminated against, you need to talk about it. One of them, it's visas. Come on, we are in 2022 and we are still blocking country scientists from the south because of visa. This is really not acceptable at this stage. What we have as well is really different programs whereby what we are trying to do is bring young people with young at heart like me. And what we did it in the Science and Innovation Forum, whereby we tried in every panel. Although when you talk science, you need a lot of experience. So we tend normally to bring very famous scientists with Nobel Prize or Wood Food Prize or a lot of publication and recognition. But still, if we could every time seed one or two young scientists in a group, it's going to bring a different perspective. The other area that I want to talk about before I leave you, I don't want to really monopolize the stage, is that really when we talk about climate change and we talk about adaptation to climate change, it's really the agenda for the next 40, 50 years. So we have really to put straight the priorities. Climate change is affecting mostly the poorest people of us. It's affecting mostly the small-scale producers. Look at what happened in Pakistan. Look at what happened in Nigeria. In Pakistan, pictures are really were vivid. They lost about 30 million 30 million families lost their livelihoods because they lost animals and they lost their crops. So as we are thinking climate change adaptation, we should always keep in mind those that are affected the most and those that are producing food but are not eating enough because of the costs and because of their inability to really access healthy food. So we need really to think about food security, we need to think about malnutrition and put it on the front. So we want climate adaptation to make sure we stop malnutrition. We want climate adaptation because it's the only path forward, but we need to prioritize poverty, reducing inequalities, and reducing malnutrition. And thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you today.
Thank you so much, Doctor. For one, for addressing young people as nothing is impossible, and also for identifying some of the challenges that young people face and how FAO and World Forum is addressing these challenges. Thank you so much again for being here with us. As you would see, we've tried to make the panelists intergenerational, both young and young at heart. Thank you. We're so privileged to also have someone who is also on the panel, the Youth Advisory Panel on Climate Change at the UN Secretary General Youth Board, Ms. Nisrin El Saim. And by way of introducing her, she's an environment and climate activist that started out in 2012. She holds a bachelor's degree in physics from the University of Khartoum in Sudan, and also a master's degree in renewable energy from the same university. She's the general coordinator for youth and environment in Sudan, which is a platform where she gives all working youth the networking they need. As part of, she's also part of many regional and international platforms where she leads and mentors a large number of young people, including Yongo, Bagja, Abu Dhabi Youth Voices, and others. She's also a junior negotiator with the African Group of Negotiators in Technology Transfer, where she focuses on policies of countries regarding climate change and renewable energy. And in 2019, of course, she was chosen as the chair, the UN Secretary General Youth Advisory on Climate Change, along with 6 other young people like herself. Yeah, really great to have you here. So my question that I would like to check with you today is, of course, I know you work with many young people, and then you represent the voices of young and marginalized people across board. So the question I'd like to check is, what are young people actually saying the engagement of young people should look like for it to be meaningful? Because this is what we talk about, that young people should be engaged, but then it would be great to really hear how young people view meaningful youth engagement. And of course, I'd like to check if there are examples that you know of, and what measures and platforms need to be put in place for young people to be meaningfully engaged in terms of policy and action and yeah, what have you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Well, I'm first of all glad to be here, and thank you for the food pavilion for the invitation. Also, thank you for Dr. Esmahan for pointing me as a figure from Sudan. As the moderator here mentioned, I started doing 10 years ago, in 2012. And it's been 10 years, 10 months for me in this field, and I can see how things changed from 2012 until now. At the beginning, we were talking about including young people, having young people in the table, finding our place in the discussions. And now, after 10 years, I think this part was fulfilled. So there's a lot of young people in many places. And our youth advisory group to the Secretary General, who's the highest policy maker within the UN, is one of the examples. But there's a lot of other youth advisories for different, not only UN agencies, but other agencies, specifically in climate change. Now, I think the title of today is the real problem that we are still facing, which is the meaningful youth engagement. What does meaningful mean, and how can young people be meaningfully engaged? So meaningful for me means that when I am invited to be an advisor, for example, what I advise with actually being taken care of and being listened to and actually acted upon. It means meaningful youth engagement is we have a seat not for showing diversity, not for showing that we have young people in the panel, because a lot of time this is what happens. I get invited to events and I tell them, well, I have no background in this topic, for example. And the victim of that is normally Vlad, our colleague in the Youth Advisory Group. He's from Moldova. So I tell them, for example, he's a finance person and an economist. And I say, I'm a physicist. I have no idea about economy and finance. But I can tell you who's the perfect person for that. And I say, he's Vlad. Vlad is the person. And they say, well, unfortunately, we have too many white men in the panel. I was like, okay, then you are not inviting me because I'm Nisreen. You're inviting me because you have too many white men in the panel, and you want me to be the black female that actually shows diversity. I end up at the end taking lessons and tutoring by Vlad himself. He says, Nisreen, this is the table for the seat. This is not your table. You are not allowed to give it up. So please take the seat, even if it's not fair for me, it's not fair for you, I understand. But if we give them our spaces, then we will very soon, even this one seat, we will lose it. So I end up talking to him hours on the phone, and I end up also signing for an economy degree just to be able to talk. They invite me to economy events, really. One of the other things that we are actually also facing, we hear a lot, especially in the climate change about greenwashing and how private sector is using greenwashing. And I think the terminology that we are using a lot, and I used it in one of the meetings with the Secretary General himself, is youth washing. There's a lot of youth washing happening. Well, everyone wants to work with young people. I understand, I get it very well, very good. But do you want to work with us just for publicity, or you actually want to work with young people? If you want to really work with young people, then you don't define what is the priorities of young people. You ask the young people and they say, well, our priority is 1, 2, 3. If you want to work with young people, then you don't say how young people should wear, not how young people should act, not how young people should say or what to say, or how their haircut should look like. We don't have to wear ties and suits all the time just to fit the criteria. We have our own style, we have our own way of showing things. If you really want to work with us, you should accept us as we are. And this is the actual meaningful youth engagement. We want to make change in this world, and we will not make changes by making posters, by stigmatizing ourselves, by being an activist only. And I don't hate to be called an activist. For some reason, a lot of people were saying that, no, I'm not an activist, I'm an advocate. And I was like, what is the difference between activist and advocate? Actually, there is no, because all of us are activists here. If you are actually fighting for a cause, then you are an activist. And diamondizing the idea of activism is really not the cool thing to do, because a lot of people who are activists just don't know how to move to the next stage of activism. So if someone is a negotiator today, this is a way of activism too. This is different tool. So as young people, we need to be able to reach different tools of activism, and then we choose the tool that we suits us and we think it's more meaningful and more to the point. One last thing I will be talking about in meaningful youth engagement. I hear a lot that youth are the hope of the future. You are the one who will save this world. And I say, why? Why should we be the one who saved the world? Why we didn't actually mess up the world? I mean, what did we do wrong so all of this huge burden fall into our shoulder? I mean, a lot of young people have a lot of mental health problem now because of this. They think we cannot save the world, we cannot do anything. And that's true. Sometimes we cannot do anything. We cannot access finance. We cannot access high-level meetings. A lot of areas in the world we cannot even vote to choose who's going to represent us. So how can you put this responsibility on us without enabling us for reaching resources, for reaching knowledge, for reaching meetings, for reaching even the voting boxes? So meaningful youth engagement is a process, and it's taking longer than it should, because especially with climate change, there is a very important factor that we should count on, which is time. We don't have time to waste, and we should act right now and don't accept less than you deserve, especially for the young people and the young audience here. If you been offered or given something less than you deserve, then just refuse it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nisreen. I have met Nisreen a few months ago, but our friendship got really strengthened because whenever I hear her speech, it's never the same. She never has a paper or notes. She just comes and speaks, and you know it's coming straight from the heart. Moving to Mr. Shuhail. Mr. Shuhail bin Saifullah is the coordinator of the youth program in the International Center of Climate Change and Development, also called ICAD. In his career, he has taken strides towards promoting youth inclusion in climate policy dialogues and creating landscape for youth to undergo capacity development. In the broader climate change action-related work, Shuhail plays an avid role in coordinating field visits for research and co-organizes the COP27 Global Conference Program, which is an international platform for climate change experts, academics, researchers, and practitioners. Shuhail also has experience working with climate change adaptation disparity towards people with disability, older people with disability, and others. Mr. Shuhail, thank you for joining us today. You are a coordinator of the youth program within ICAD. According to your experience, what options do you offer to youth, and how would you work on making these options more available and especially accessible by all? If you'd like to share with us, please.
Hello. Right. Hi, everyone. As the moderator mentioned, I'm Sohail. I'm from Bangladesh. Now, Did someone fall? Okay. So, as I was saying, as with everything, I'd like to start with the problem and then usually tend to go into the solutions. So the problems that usually youth face is four phases. First is, when we talk about youth, one of the major aspects that came about was the educational aspect. Second was funding. Third was institutional. Fourth is basically opportunities. Now, we understand that these four are usually interconnected with one another, because if you have the opportunity to study, if you have the opportunity to get your education, you will be capacitated in that front, but you need the opportunity in the first place. So the way we work is we try and bridge those gaps together through our programs. Now, we mostly work in two modalities. One is we try and do it in a capacity building of hand-holding manner, that we will be bringing in experts, we will be bringing in practitioners from all over the world, and we will be giving you handheld understanding of what climate change is, and usually it has a specific theme or topic. This year around, we're working on how we can capacitate young women into understanding the feminist lens that persists in climate change, or the disparity that women face in climate change compared to men. So the way we do it is we bring in our experts, we bring in our knowledge practitioners, we bring in our partners and teach them about climate change leading up to intermediate level of climate change understanding. Once that is done, we do the thematic aspect of it. We actually take them to field visits and showcase how when you read something in a book and when you read something or when you see something in real life, there's a huge difference in it. The best example that I can give you is, I've never been to Egypt, but I've seen camels on TVs and YouTube. But the moment I saw a camel in front of me, which is like 7 feet tall, it's pretty intimidating. Similarly, when you're reading about how in a country like ours, it is very disaster prone. We have flash flooding, we have tidal surges, we have cyclones, we have droughts, we have you name it, we have it. So when you read about it, it's one thing. But when you go to field and you realize that this house needed to be elevated by 3 to 4 feet just to avoid being flooded away during, let's say, a cyclone. Or how when we were in the northern side of our country, which is usually the most disaster flash flooding and as well as poverty-stricken area in our country, I was in a focus group discussion with people with disability. And one woman came up to me and told me that just to speak with us, she wasn't able to wear anything for the past 3 days. Now that is a very interesting point to make. So when I asked why is that the case, she mentioned that during one of the flash floods, she lost her house, she lost her possessions, she lost everything. And the only garment that she's wearing right now is the only garment she has. So if she was wearing that for the past few days, she wouldn't be able to present herself in front of me or in front of our team from the capital. So that being said, when you read about it, when I'm telling you about it, oh, thank you. When I'm telling you about it, it's a little more, it affects one way, but when you, let's say, go to field or when you see something, let's say you saw the camel in front of you, you realize that there is a higher amount of impact necessary. And when we talk about, say, how youth can be, say, brought into the foray of climate change, we need to just look into the third world, least developed countries or countries which are most disaster stricken. In our country, volunteerism and as well as youth actions are the most pivotal part and as well as important part for disaster management, because it's not always possible to have policymakers implement their policies onto the ground levels and grassroots levels. It is usually seen to the communities and as well as the leaders to take it from there. So the youth are usually seen as the people who volunteer for doing the early warning systems, taking people to shelters, taking people with disability to shelters, and as well as making sure that the protocols are maintained. Now, back to the problems that we have, educational and institutional. Let's say if I was not educated enough, I wouldn't be able to speak about the problems that we see. So to capacitate youth in understanding why climate change is a major aspect is of, let's say, of very high importance. The other aspect is institutional backing. Say, when I was introduced as I am a part of International Center of yada, yada, yada. But if I did not belong to an institution, I would not have the, let's say, emphasis necessary to have my voice heard. So we need to have institutions and as well as universities and organizations back youth up so that they are capacitated and brought into the spotlight. The other thing, which is the most controversial as well as most tricky part, is financing or funding, or the lack of funds itself. Because when youth are brought into conventions like these, it's seen as a tokenistic understanding. That I'm going to put this person here just to take box my, let's say, requirement for my donor or my agency or whichever. But whether or not this youth is being able to speak about their problems is one aspect. So we have a few youth representatives from the LDCs in our CVF, Central Climate Vulnerability Forum Pavilion. And a few of them have mentioned that they got the party badge, they got the funding, but they're not being taken into negotiations itself. They do not get the coordination meetings itself. So even with funding itself, it's seen that we do not have the backing necessary. Now, all of this together, we find that there is a lack of opportunities. Now, how do opportunities come about is through networking. Networking leads to more people knowing more people. More people leading to them exchanging, let's say, business cards or your information. And let's say if you have a conference coming up or a training module coming up, you immediately remember, oh, I met someone that day. And that person was a youth. That person seemed like he had a bit of, or she had a bit of basis. And she can come in and basically take this session on capacitating youth. Using the training of trainer modality is one of the major aspects as well. That is what we use for our organization as well. We train youth for 6 months and then tell them, now that you're capacitated, go to your community and capacitate more youth as well. Because generally one major issue we find is that once a project ends, so does the leader. Because your project leads to funding, leads to the leader having the opportunity. But project ends, so does the funding, so does the leader. So if you're able to capacitate the leader to capacitate more of your community throughout the few months or few tenures that you have, you're able to continue that as a domino or like, let's say, cyclic effect. With that, I'd like to end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shohai. I mean, I've always believed addressing the climate crisis would demand climate champion of all of us. Thank you so much for highlighting how you've been that champion in your community. Moving forward now, I'll be moving to Ms. Nada Fayu, who is a rural engineering student at the Institute Azantu of Agronomy and Veterinary Medicine. Nada is a Moroccan agronomy and rural engineering student at the IAV Azantu Water, Energy and Infrastructure Related Studies. She's interested in food security, nutrition, and agriculture in general. She gets deeply and consults in the water, energy, and food security nexus space from a youth perspective. She's also a member of HIAS, which is the biggest international association of students in agriculture and related sciences. From a youth perspective now, what I would like to check with you is, can you please tell us your experience and what young people need to achieve their integration into these change-making spaces that we're talking about?
Thank you. Hi, good morning, and okay, I'm stressed because there is my first speech, and okay. I was telling myself before, I just wanted to go out and run away, but everything has a start, and here's mine. I am a young Moroccan lady studying agronomy and majoring in rural engineering. I'm also a member of IAS, the International Association of Students in Agriculture and Related Sciences. Why? Thank you. It's an honor for me. And I have joined what we called Familias because of the youth-led opportunities it offers to people. Its missions is to promote the exchange of knowledge and idea across the globe through scientific events and related cultural activities and exchange programs. Thanks. Where studies get the chance to learn hard skills in the field of their studies and expertise in other countries. So this diversity of the member, their backgrounds and their motivation to innovate has pushed to create projects within food systems to solve problems faced by a community locally. With more enthusiasm and willingness to share and help each other, the global project competition is being organized every year to support ideas of projects to see the light and accelerate action on the ground. Being part of such an association opened the doors to the international world to broaden a person's visions and ideas and adopt a critical and more productive mindset. To be here with you, it's a privilege for me to be able to meet and interact with specialists in the field of agriculture and food system in general, to learn from all the amazing side events and being held in different pavilions and join the talks and workshops about the Coronavia joint work on agriculture. But sadly, this isn't accessible for all my colleagues back home or youth in general. I believe that many of us heard that youth lack support in terms of finances. But I personally think that the most important thing we need is trust. We want to be heard. We want to be trusted by you and everyone around us to support and guide us towards the right direction and help us shape our knowledge to make the best use of it. So as to invest in building strong and sustainably food system for the future, we are deciding for right now. We are urgent to close the gap between different groups to collaborate and empower each other, because today I'm considered as youth, but tomorrow I can be a decision maker. Thank you.
Thank you, Nada. I feel like we anticipated your speech because we all trusted you before hearing you and we encouraged you. We closed the gap, so Mrs. Ismahan was holding the mic for you as an expert. And thank you for your words. Don't be stressed. We all had our first time and we can imagine how it was. But this is the best start for you. Now moving to the audience, because this is our day and our event and our pavilion and our field. Who would like to share with us? Yes, Wiebe.
Hello. Yes, this works. Great. Thank you very much, Aya, and also my congratulations to Ms. Nada Fali for making your first intervention at a major conference. Very well done. I have a question actually for the two panelists sitting on my left, so Ms. El-Wafi and Ms. Al-Saim. And this is actually a two-folded question around accessibility and culture in your organizations. So I would like to reference to a quote that my boss and founder of my organization, Danush Dinesh, often uses, which is, culture eats strategy for breakfast, which basically means you have all the plans and papers in place in your organization, but if there's a working culture and some sort of behavior in the team, there won't be any change if you don't address those. So my question to both of you is, do you see in your organizations that there is a change in behavior of your peers, especially on the senior level, to allow the youth to access also the high-level discussions? That's my first question. And the second one is very short, and it's actually more of a request, is if you can make a very small kind of statement or pledge or commitment that you will take back with you after this COP and implement in your organization this year, so that we can ask you next year in COP28 whether it actually has made a change.
First of all, before answering your question, I want to also congratulate Neda for her first speech. I remember my first COP. I spent 3 days before being able to actually enter the venue. I used to do the security and then stand there for 3 days. But yes, first times can be hard. But well done. Back to your question. It's very manipulating question, because sometimes, yes, we are giving spaces, but they give a limit to how much our space can go. So for example, we get invited to rooms where we are not either, as Suhail mentioned earlier, not allowed to speak, or if we spoke, they give us little time, not like the other speakers. Or if we have like an equal speech opportunity, then very few are actually listening to what we are saying. And there is another part where we actually get invited to an event. We give equal speech opportunities, for example, and people are listening to us and referring to what we said, but then the implementation is something else. And as young people, I think what we all are working for, not the opportunity to speak, because we can speak in social media, we can speak in panels, is the opportunity to actually make a change by the implementation. So as long as our speeches doesn't make it to implementation, we are just like the world leaders that we are calling against every day. Well, we call them to walk the talk, while we also talk without walking the talk. The only difference, I think, between us and them, they have the say. They can say, do that, do this. They have the budgets, they have the governments, and we don't have anything. And that's why I said earlier that it's not fair to give the burden for young people without giving them the tools that can enable them. So, going to your second question, my commitment is we are working on something called Youth Climate Justice Fund, which is a fund that we are aiming to fund youth-led organizations with to be able to do climate action in their countries, access to different conferences, be able to actually walk the talk. So my commitment will be working towards this fund and accessing as much bigger number of young people, youth-led organizations around the world in order to enable them to walk the talk. Thank you.
Just to add, from FAO perspective, so we have our strategic framework and we have two strategies that are really built on youth. So we have climate strategy and we have also the science and innovation strategy. So the purpose within FAO, it's a large organization. What we are trying to do is really to expand the basis. So in any organization, you need a pyramid. And in that pyramid, we realized that maybe we have made it off. So in my office, for example, I just got 3 P1s. P1s, it's an entry level in FAO. I got 1 in communication, 1 in IT, and 1 in digital as well. So definitely we are looking at that from FAO perspective. For us, the two strategy to bring more science and innovation, to bring more action in terms of action towards adaptation to climate change, we need youth. What I want to say from this panel, I think we see more action at the global level and less at the local level. So what you need to do, it's really local. That's where change happens. What we need, it's in every county to have young people as part of it. And I would say for the young people, you need to be entrepreneurial. You need really to think more private sector than anything else. So we need a transformation. We all agree on it. That transformation will happen only by having small and medium enterprise at the local level. And that's where we want youth to come to agriculture. We want a young Sudani to come to agriculture and walk the path of the agri-food system, not only production. Look at processing, look at marketing, look at logistics. That's where money is. That's where return on investment is. So I think for me, the two strategies we had at FAO, it's complemented with a strategy on private sector engagement. And there is finance and there is implementation, as you mentioned it, dear. We need really you to come forcefully and forget about the government job. Do your own enterprise sincerely. If you don't do it at the beginning, it's very hard to do it later on. And bring your innovation, try it, and finance is key. And I'm very glad to hear about this. And there are many other finances coming. Just grab them and run your own path.
Because we are running out of time, we'd like to take one last comment. We've got 2, so.
Thank you so much. My name is Isaac Ndiamuhachi. I'm a social entrepreneur dealing in renewable energy technologies and post-harvest handling for smallholder farmers. I'm glad you have mentioned something to do with being enterprising as young people. But of course, as young people still, we have so many innovators, so many entrepreneurs, but to access the needed funding, it is still a challenge. Now, if I can give myself as an example, I run solar dryers for smallholder farmers. And in this, you find your solar dryer is as cheap as even $40 for the smallholder farmer, but they still can't afford. They need some kind of further subsidizing. You know the nature of farmers at the grassroots. So you develop more convenient models for such farmers, and still, because you need further subsidizing, the market forces cannot allow you. So you need such kind of booster funding. So you be like, oh, where do I go? You fail, you move here, you move there, but things don't pan out as expected. To date, I have deployed 2 solar drying centers for smallholder farmers, benefiting 60 farmers. So, but as the scale up is still a bit of a challenge. It is actually a big challenge. So it is hard to access financing, even when we have these innovations. Not one innovation, not two innovations. I have tested and I have prototyped myself. So I would like to get more clearly how young people can get that kind of financing. And of course, in other aspects, like the science and innovation program, would also like to know clearly how to jump on them. Otherwise, your private sector is something lucrative in as far as climate action is concerned, because it helps more people contribute either in the slowest way, in the smallest capacities and biggest capacities, while addressing a broad range of SDGs. So I like that direction, and I think it would be much more impactful in as far as young people are concerned. I thank you so much.
Thank you for this. My advice for scaling up this project would be three things. First of all, the Global Center for Adaptation. The Global Center for Adaptation launched a competition called Call for Adaptation Resilience. And I think what you are talking about is very much fitting to the criteria of that competition. Secondly, the agribusiness project by African Development Bank, and both GCA and African Development Bank have booths here. It's the two projects, I tried them. I worked with some of people who actually work there, and they are very much working well, enabling you to access more funders, also more markets for not only you, but for the small farmers that you are working with. So I will really recommend these two things, the GCA Adaptation Resilience Competition and Enable Agriculture Program by the African Development Bank.
Thank you so much, Nisreen, for this short and precise answer. Now you know who to contact to get some funding. We are running late and we have to free the room because there is another session, but welcome everyone to network outside after we wrap up.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. It's been an amazing discussion such that we don't want to end it. So, but then thank you so much for the amazing panelists that have shared their wealth of experiences and best practices with us. Unfortunately, we can't go beyond this. So thank you so much for coming, and then we appreciate the rich discussion. Thank you.
Before leaving the room, would we take a picture, all of us together? Do we do it around, or just with two speakers? We can take it with the logo. Please join us for a quick picture around the world.
Hello, everyone. So our next session starts in 15 minutes, so don't go away. There's more coming. You're going to love it, so please come back.